All right, welcome back to the Medium Cool Show, episode 9. Today we got a special guest with us, the one and only Jake Mueller from the Cinebums Podcast, my favorite podcast on the internet.
Wow, it's high praise. Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah.
This is wild in the flesh with the Medium Cool Show. So
the Cinebums Podcast is kind of an inspiration to like why I wanted to start my own show on YouTube, because I like doing it with your brother and John.
Yeah, Steve Jobs episode.
Yeah, and that kind of got me more interested in it's really like the kind of the catalyst for why I started my own YouTube show with Jack.
We're ground zero for the show then, basically.
It's cool listening to you guys. You guys have a really good podcast. I'll listen to it in the car when I'm like driving around. It's so funny because it's like you'll listen to podcasts and you'll be like, oh, I know so much about these people that I know nothing about in real life.
Yeah,
Exactly. You guys, like, I actually like hang out with you and stuff.
We know each other.
That's like
in real life, so
yeah, it's cool.
It's an extra layer. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. That's nice.
Jake has his own show called the Cinebums Podcast. He does it with his brother, and then his brother's friend, John. Is there anyone else involved? It's just you three, right?
We're like the three main co-hosts, I guess. But yeah, it's us three. Okay. They started it way before I was involved. Like, I guest starred on it for years, but then like this past 2 years, I kind of just started doing my own episodes.
It seems like you do a lot of work for them, and like you kind of do half of the shows are pretty much kind of yours too.
They are.
Yeah.
Well, it's like before they did like one episode a month. Now we're doing 4 a month, and like half of them are mine. So
yeah, I kind of see you like grinding on it too. Like you guys
it's a grind.
Yeah, it is.
Posting a lot, but it's also like an inspiration to us.
Well, I want to have you guys on my episodes too. I know you're coming on for the 2010s, the best of the 2010s.
Yeah.
Because we're doing like a decade series right now, and Jack's got to come on for like some Fellini episode or something.
Yeah, something. Shit, yeah.
Something catered towards your taste and stuff.
Yeah, so. We'll figure it out. Definitely not horror though. Don't have me on for that.
No like Giallo or 70s Italian horror episode.
Yeah, we never talk about horror on the show, even though like I love it. You and I can do a horror episode, Jake, sometime too on here. I don't know.
Yeah, we were talking about doing the Frank Henenlotter series.
Yeah,
so, like something to like highlight those movies. So that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think we could do something with Brendan.
Yeah.
We should Brendan on this.
Shout out to Brendan.
Yeah.
He wanted a shout out because he knew I was coming on.
Brendan, Jake's roommate.
Yeah.
You've been to the theaters and shit?
I've been to the theaters, yeah. What have I seen recently?
Yeah, what have you seen recently?
We're going to talk about Beau is Afraid, so I'll save my thoughts on that. But Renfield I saw last week.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys want to talk about that. I don't know if I want to start with such a negative...
We can do it because I want to talk about some movies that I've seen too that I like. Yeah. We don't even talk about do a full in-depth discussion.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about movies. We'll talk about movies we've seen recently and stuff.
Well, I'll just say about Renfield is just I didn't like it at all, and I don't know. I mean, you could chime in, but I wanted more Nicolas Cage. I wanted more of a straight up Universal monster movie, and it kind of felt like 5 different movies in one, where it's kind of jumbled and overly just stuffed with different genres and weird tonal shifts. Like the theater I saw it with, loved it, but I was kind of out of it from the beginning.
I think if you're a Nicolas Cage fan, Jack and I, because we do a lot of Nicolas Cage content, especially recently, and those videos do well because he just has such a strong, crazy fan base. I think
he does.
Because Nicolas Cage in this movie is fucking great, I would say. And Renfield,
he's good,
he's the best part of it. That's what you when he's on screen, you're watching it, and that's why I fucked with that movie. And then I like the gore and the violence a lot. Cause I'm kind of a gore hound myself, and
it's a gore phobe.
I just saw The Evil Dead Rise. I didn't really like it that much, except for the gore. But other than that, I thought it was pretty forgettable and kind of boring. And I saw it with Ian, and he thought it was pretty boring as well. And it just wasn't it didn't escalate. It wasn't the story wasn't interesting enough, I think.
I mean, I love the original. Have you seen the original 3? I don't know if we talked about that.
I've seen the first Evil Dead. I haven't seen Evil Dead 2, which is, kind of, I should.
It's a gap,
Yeah. Yeah, Evil Dead Rise, I don't know, it was alright.
I heard the second one's the best one. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen the first one, and I've seen Army of Darkness.
You skipped 2. I mean, 2 is the best of both worlds, where it's a perfect horror movie, but also a perfect comedy.
Yeah.
And the best balance of like what I was saying about Renfield.
Renfield is a horror comedy.
It is, yeah. It it got really serious at
Which
times.
is rare, I think, nowadays.
It is rare, yeah.
Like for wide release mainstream shit.
There's not a lot of horror comedies now.
No.
The original Evil Dead trilogy, I think, is amazing, but the new one seems really self-serious and kind of like basic and standard issue in terms of like the horror parts and the story. So that's but I need to see it still. You know?
The thing about the first ones that were really charming was all like the practical effects.
Yeah, the low budget part of it too.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the first one's really following that formula.
No.
I do like how it kind of builds off like the premise of there are these people that are really close to these individuals that are turning evil.
Yeah.
And like that taunting aspect of like, save me.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I got you, I'm evil.
Yeah.
Like, I love that.
But last night I watched this movie called Entertainment, starring Greg Turkington and John C. Reilly, and Michael Cera has a cameo in it. And directed by a really underrated director, in my opinion, named Rick Alverson. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
I'm like a fan of his movies because I watched this movie called The Comedy, starring Tim Heidecker from like 2012.
Oh, yeah.
He makes like these like crazy like anti-comedy, super dry, like anti-comedies. I like it a lot. And then he made this movie called The Mountain with Jeff Goldblum and Ty Sheridan. And Ty Sheridan's also in Entertainment, but yeah, he's definitely a guy that like I think he's super underrated, like American art house, like underground type vibe.
When did this come out?
Entertainment, 2015.
Yeah. So he's like a new wave
guy. Yeah, he's kind of like a newer wave dude, like kind of like a huskier sort of mountain guy. But he makes very like these sort of neo-realist. He's kind of like a little bit like Sean Baker.
Yeah.
Kind of like he makes people like movies about real people like in the real world, and has sort of this like subtle commentary on society and people. And Greg Turkington is like a failing comedian that does like these dead end shows in like California, like the California desert, at these like sleazy bars and shit. And his type of comedy is very like abrasive and controversial and not necessarily funny. He's just like trying to get like being edgy as a sort of like performance. Yeah, it's quite good. I would recommend just checking out any like the comedy, or I'd probably start with the comedy, which is interesting. Like when you go to see that movie, you're like, oh, it's Tim Heidecker and Eric Wareheim.
Yeah.
But then it's like totally not like what you expect, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not like in the tone of Tim and Eric at all?
Not at all.
No.
Wow. It's all I can say is it's a Rick Alverson picture. And I think the only way you can understand that with like a lot of auteurs is you just like watch their picture and then you get a vibe from it. Definitely. Like I want to do an underrated directors like list on the show.
I would love to do that too. I have a lot of names.
Yeah.
Especially modern directors that don't get a lot of shine.
Yeah. He would definitely be on that list for me, for
like
modern
Martin
directors.
Scorsese.
Like Scorsese,
Spielberg,
Yeah.
Oh, the
all
Russo brothers. Have you heard of them, dude?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved The Gray Man was probably my favorite movie of 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll edit that out.
Yeah, so Fellini Satyricon, Jack, you want to introduce it since you were like the catalyst behind it?
Yeah, so I was the one that wanted to watch this movie, I guess. I'll take the fall. When did it come out? Do you know?
1969,
So,
the height of like the fucking cultural revolution, and you can totally tell that it came out in that time because of just like the looks of everyone, and the sexuality and the drugs and the trippy atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's a very progressive tone.
I love 1969 for a film.
It was like very like the
same year that Medium Cool came out.
Ooh. It all ties together.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fellini Satyricon by Federico Fellini, one of my favorite directors. His take on ancient Roman story, just in a very weird sci-fi way. He describes it as a sci-fi movie, which from the look, I definitely get. The set pieces are crazy in this movie. Definitely his biggest overall looking movie that he's done up to that time. The story's like very convoluted, very confusing. It kind of follows like this path of storytelling that was like lost in a way. So it's like kind of like ancient Roman, and it's hard to really distinguish what's going on. The transitions are very jarring. Like you'll jump from one story to the next, and apparently it's all supposed to flow together. Didn't feel like that at all. Just in terms of like Fellini's talent, I appreciated it.
Sure.
You know, like what he was able to pull off was, I thought, really impressive.
I think in terms of him, I mean, he's known as one of the most ambitious and boundary-pushing filmmakers of his generation. I feel like that movie, even though it didn't resonate with us as a whole, I feel like was just kind of a really special product to witness. Because like you said, the story was very loose and not really, like, didn't have a connected tissue between things, so it was really abstract, but like the sets were incredible. Just like how ambitious, he's like blending, like you said, sci-fi and like historical fiction, and just the look of it is so, like Felix was saying, like this, it felt like postmodern, pushing the boundaries of filmmaking as it like transitioned during the 70s. Like, and you don't think of Fellini as those generation of filmmakers, but he like adapted to the times well. Like, I haven't seen Amarcord, but I feel like he adapted to like where film was going.
We're watching that next.
Yeah, we'll definitely watch Amarcord next. But yeah, I appreciated this movie much more than I liked it personally. There's definitely some things I know you researched heavily about like Roman politics probably and like historical significance that we missed out on. You're a Roman like historical expert or something. This might be like one of the greatest movies depicting that sort of time period. So
yeah, but he also went out of his way to make it so gross and grimy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, dude, like, he has that circus feel that he has in every Fellini movie, just like at the forefront of this movie. Like, everything feels like such a circus. It plays out as if it were a play, just on like a bigger scale.
That's what caught me off guard first, because like the opening scene feels like you're watching a stage production, and then kind of the sets and the like how the plot progressive just kind of like it blends in to the rest of the settings. I was kind of just like, holy shit, it was like off-putting at first, like how the movie looked, but
it is very like, it's almost a biblical epic, which is kind of a different from what I'm used to with Fellini. And I just want to preface by saying, I think Fellini is an amazing director. I think this is he's an amazing director. This movie didn't really hit for me compared to the other ones. I thought it was kind of like, even though the sets and the way it was shot was very cool, it still felt like a little bit bland to me. I don't know. I think maybe it was just because I wasn't super engaged with what was going on. I couldn't really follow the story about this guy going through different, it's a story about a guy going through like different situations, and it is very epic in scale, because he's like going from like different like places, and he's like a king, kind of a noble at one point, and then he becomes like a slave, I think, and then he's like on a ship, and goes through all these like stages, and it's like 2 hours and 10 minutes, and but I will say like the set production is really what stood out to me. And then there's a scene where like they're in this it's like a building. I don't know if it's like a peasant building or whatever it is, and there's like an earthquake.
It's
and
like a slum, kind of.
Yeah, it's like a slum, but when they did that scene where like it all crumbles down and shit, bro,
cool.
That's beautiful.
That was cool.
Yeah, that was amazing, dude.
Yeah.
And this is this is a very sexual movie too. There's a lot of like boobs and butts, and there's some penises in it too.
There were some dicks, and Fellini was a horny director for sure.
Oh yeah.
I didn't expect 8.5 to be as horny as it was either. So
this makes 8.5 like look like really like G.
Yeah,
I know, it really does. Yeah. The thing about this movie that I'm probably higher on it than like you guys, just probably because I'm biased. He really missed his Fellini touch, where I feel like he's so good at evoking emotion. You like watch La Strada, Anticabiria, Evitioni, like they have this distinct emotion that the characters go through, and it resonates with the audience no matter like who you are. And I feel like this doesn't have that, but it substitutes it with amazing sets, and that trade-off didn't really land. I still felt like he had something to show for this. I didn't regret seeing this movie.
No, not at all. I kind of agree with what Felix was saying. Like, I love Fellini, and I'm more geared towards like his earlier work, like you said, Cabiria and La Strada, that we kind of had these heightened neo-realist movies that were really focused on character and emotion, not necessarily like overly stylized, like his later films got, that were much more, if it's kind of like Godard in a way. Like Godard had movies that were like very personal and small at the beginning, they kind of got like really neo-political and huge and ambitious later on.
Very revolutionary.
Yeah.
He also had his late 60s sort of Maoist communist revolutionary phase.
Exactly, yeah. And Fellini, I don't think was as outwardly like political or anything like that, but they definitely became more self-indulgent and, like explore, like see how far they can push the boundaries. And I tend to like directors more when they're like grounded back, like we said with Fellini, but I still want to see Amarcord and like see, because like I feel like he found his footing later on too.
Oh yeah, Amarcord he kind of shifts back. It's almost like he's doing the neo-realist family thing, but also he's also really horny in that movie.
Yeah,
because I think
Of course, yeah.
During that period of the 60s sort of revolution, like directors, especially in Italy, with people like Pasolini really pushing the boundaries, they could be more expressive with like sexuality and stuff like that after like the revolution.
I think he goes through this kind of like, so after La Dolce Vita, like he really took like a step back because apparently he was just having like crazy panic attacks on set and just like really couldn't handle stuff. And so he did a very self-indulgent film, 8.5, and it's like, it's one of the most like revered movies in like cinema, essentially. But then I feel like he like that almost gave him permission to like when director like gets too much power. Because I haven't seen Julia of the Spirits yet, but apparently it's like very similar to 8.5. And then he comes out with this Fellini Satyricon, yeah. And he did Roma, and then he did Amarcord. I feel like he definitely like he kind of goes up and then he lands a little bit because Amarcord seems like almost like it could have been made next to like Lestrado, essentially. It was very, very similar to like Evitioni and stuff like that.
When I was looking up this movie and stuff, I watched this Trailers from Hell video with John Landis reacting to like a trailer of Fellini Satyricon. And when we first started watching, when we watched the movie, I was thinking to myself, like we were talking about it, we were saying how who the fuck would like watch this? Like this is so like this is so esoteric and like no one's ever heard of this movie, blah blah blah, like it's boring or whatever. But John Landis was saying how like he like really liked the movie, like he thought it was like crazy, and he said that it actually was very successful in Europe and in America when it was released.
It was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, which is very surprising to me because I was like, dude, who the fuck would want to watch this? But apparently, like, it was actually very successful in America, surprisingly.
I feel like based off of 8.5, though, I think he had that. I was thinking like Kurosawa. I think there was a film he made, something in the 70s, where it got nominated for Best International Feature, and that's kind of when everyone started to recognize him in America.
Wait, which movie?
It might have been, I can't remember the name, I might have to tell you later.
In the 70s?
Denzo something. Yeah, it was...
Who are we talking about?
Kurosawa.
Oh, okay.
Because I was making an equivalency, because like he became popular in the mainstream based off one movie, and then everyone went back and watched everything else. I feel like Fellini was like that for 8.5, where it's like, directors were like, holy shit, like this really resonates with me, and then all of his other movies got rediscovered.
Yeah, I think that does happen with a lot of directors.
Yeah,
like
there's a bunch of examples. Yeah.
Well, they're not. Their movies are kind of like, I think a lot of even like someone with Tarantino. I think a lot of people went back and revisited Reservoir Dogs like after Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
because that was just like a Sundance hit, and I know like hearing my parents talk about they saw it after they saw Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
and they were like even more shocked by the violence in that movie. Same with a ton of modern directors too. Like the one smash hit, you recontextualize all their movies.
Yeah, for sure.
There's two late Italian movies, like late 60s Italian movies that I love that I wanted to talk about real quick.
Yeah.
There's a movie called La Grande Bouffe, which is a very, like you were saying, how this movie pushed the boundaries in terms of content. This movie's very much about hedonism.
For sure.
And like how art and hedonism kind of go hand in hand. And like it's like one of my favorite Italian movies ever made. And it's kind of rare to see, but I think it's on like Tubi or something. I saw it on the big screen. This movie's masterful. So I would highly recommend check out La Grande Bouffe. And also I just want to mention Salo real quick, because I know Felix, and we always talk about watching it, because I know he's going to love that movie and just like the content and everything. And like Pasolini was like, he was like the new wave of like extremist, Italian directors in that movie.
Well, I was listening to Eli Roth is on the Video Archives podcast talking about giallos and stuff, and he says that like Pasolini is actually the most influential director when it comes to content, because he was really the first person to really push all the boundaries and allow like the censors to let like people like Dario Argento and like Fulci and like break through and with like violence and stuff. So I need to see Salo. Like
definitely one of the most important directors ever. Got killed for your work. Like that says something about his impact on society.
Because he made so many movies that were like opposing fascism and all these things. And I think Salo has like a kind of a dubious reputation where people just think it's a gross out movie, in terms of the content, which it is, but like it has so much more like underneath the initial, shock value that the movie has. And I thought it was super layered, and I like want to buy the Criterion and rewatch it many times, because I feel like there's a lot of layers to it. So big recommendation for those two.
Yeah, for sure. And Is Fellini like kind of the GOAT, like Italian director?
He's my
I know for you, yeah.
Yeah, he's my GOAT of like all time, dude. Just all time.
I like Vittorio De Sica because I'm more of a neorealist guy because he did Bicycle Thieves and Umberto D.
And
But
Dino Risi, who Dino Risi, who made Il Sorpasso.
Yeah.
That's another good one. You know, Bernardo Bertolucci, definitely up there.
Michelangelo.
Antonio, dude, Antonioni for me might be actually number one if I'm keeping it 100 with the neo-realist shit.
Yeah.
When it comes to neo-realist shit, I think I'm going to put Michelangelo Antonioni over Fellini, but I think as a whole, like, Fellini's filmography might be a little bit above, but I think personally, Michelangelo Antonioni, my favorite neo-realist director. I got to throw in Roberto Rossellini in there as well.
Of course, yeah.
You know?
He's one of the best neorealist directors too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, really important.
Yeah. And you also have Ermanno Olmi's.
Yeah, I was going to shout out Il Posto. Yeah. I don't know him as much of a director. I haven't seen his other movies, but Il Posto is such a underappreciated neorealist film about like the working class in the 60s, like during industrialization and stuff. It's a really important movie and really engaging.
I was first introduced to Ari Aster, obviously, with Hereditary. I mean, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know his name or anything because, like, his debut feature. But it definitely left an impression on me. I had seen The Strange Thing with the Johnsons as well, like, at a party. And it was really crazy short film that I hadn't really seen something like that before. I liked it. I know Jake doesn't like the Johnsons. But I liked it.
It's off-putting, dude. It's like you're not really supposed to like it because it's uncomfortable, dude.
It's more so the content of the movie just felt unnecessary.
Yeah,
and just bizarre. It's undeniably well constructed and you know, acted and everything.
Yeah, it's definitely like engaging and makes you like feel a type of way. But I was saying with that, I didn't know like it was the same director.
Right.
And then I think a year later, Jack and I went to go see Midsommar in theaters. And then that also made an impression on me because just how crazy it was and stuff. And then that's when Ari Aster kind of became like sort of a household name for us like film junkie motherfuckers out here.
Yeah.
You know? And then I was like really looking forward to his next film, whenever that would have come out, which was Beau is Afraid, almost 4 years after his last movie. I saw Beau is Afraid the first day it came out in LA. Like, I was like one of the first people to see it because when I wrote my review on Letterboxd, it only had like 300 reviews on it and shit.
Damn.
And yeah, so I went to go see that, and crazy ass movie. What do you guys want to?
What, did you see it yet?
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it last night. Yeah.
You're pretty fresh in your brain. I mean, coming off of Midsommar is a movie I don't like very much, so my expectations were pretty mixed, I guess, because the trailers really sold me on this movie. It is a crazy movie. I think it's really great, though. I think it's very, like we were saying with Satyricon, just incredibly ambitious, and like the definition of like, how did this get made? How did a studio like A24 fund a movie like this? And it's clear, you know, like he had 2 pretty big hits in a row.
Yeah, Hereditary, I want to say Hereditary is like one of the scariest movies I've like ever seen. And when I first saw that movie, it had like an impact afterwards, especially like at night when like I'm in my apartment and stuff. And there's this terrifying shot in the movie in Hereditary when she sees like her dead mom like standing there in the dark.
Yeah.
Which is a very real thing because sometimes you do like your eyes will like make out figures in the dark, and I think it's maybe like a survival thing or something that we have just evolutionary biologically that we like see threats in the dark and we make out faces or whatever. But like that, anytime I was like in the dark in my apartment, I feel like I was gonna see that like old grandma like standing there and shit. Kind of gave me like a little bit like It Follows also was a
It Follows is another like good art house horror movie.
Yeah, I love that one too.
We watched Hereditary last Halloween with your brother, and he had been wanting to watch it for a while, and he was like definitely pumping himself up. You know, he's like I've heard so much shit about this movie. Like he's like getting ready for it, and yeah, it's fucking terrifying. I was glad I was watching it with people again. You know, because that movie fucking scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, I don't know I've never watched it by myself, and I feel like it would take on a whole new level of terror. And like what you were saying about how he portrayed the old lady in that movie, and how it's like it kind of preys on an instinctual fear of like survival mode. Like I felt like in Beau is Afraid, there's a lot of really abstract ideas he put on screen in terms of like anxiety and like how your psyche and how like you kind of deal with it and how you perceive the world.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's the best thing I've always thought about Ari Aster is how he takes very abstract concepts and puts them onto screen, like very taboo and very visceral thing. I feel like he's made his name off just being like a very visceral and reactive filmmaker, and like people love just reacting to his movies and see what crazy concept is he gonna try next. And BEAU is like his craziest movie, to me by far.
Yeah, definitely his craziest movie. And then with Midsummer, I saw it twice in theaters. I liked it a lot, and I saw it with Jack, and then I saw it again, like, with this girl at the ArcLight in Hollywood, and I got an HJ in the car afterwards.
Nice.
Maybe that's why they shut down, because they saw these guys getting hand jobs in the fucking the parking lot.
Yeah.
Beau is Afraid is definitely one of those films where you're not going to start out with Beau is Afraid for your first movie. Like, you got to have a couple of bangers under your belt before they like give you the opportunity to just make this carte blanche art house, whatever the fuck you want to do type movie, which is definitely what this movie is. And same with, like, I got that feeling with Babylon as well, directed by Damien Chazelle. Like, that was like his like big swing type movie. And in my Letterboxd review, I wrote that we live in the ADHD art house era.
Yeah,
with like
everything everywhere.
With this movie and everything everywhere, and then kind of like Babylon was definitely like a little bit like ADHD.
Big ADD movie.
Yeah, and we're getting like these big epic ADHD A24 pictures. But yeah, Beau is Afraid, I definitely was a standout picture I've seen this year. Even though we're still early in the year, but now we're getting more movies and shit. First of all, I think it's too long. Like, I thought it was very, like, the last third was kind of, like, a little bit of, I was kind of, like, drudging along and stuff, and it was maybe a little bit too pretentious and shit going on, but the first second third was, like, really, like, engaging and stuff.
I think everything leading up to the woods segment with the, you know, kind of animation flashback, I think is, like, almost perfect in terms of, like, maintaining the tone and, like, a really clear intention. And I think after, like, the whole stage performance, mock performance, like, his life and all that shit, it goes a little down, like, at the rabbit hole of, like, mommy issues and a very whiny tone towards the third act. I don't know, I feel like other people don't have that problem because it is so well acted, and it kind of hits home more of the things that Beau was dealing with and stuff like that. And of course the very end is like pretty breathtaking, and like that whole he's goes on that boat like out into the middle of the water, and it kind of transitions into like this
Truman Show.
Yeah, it's like it gets very meta. And very literal with the kind of metaphors that was introduced earlier. So
if we were going to describe perhaps like what this movie was about, or like what the premise was, what would you say?
I think it's an adventure movie on paper, but it's more just so internal. Like everything that happens to him, I feel like could be interpreted like as real or as just his psyche running wild and his kind of trauma and anxiety creeping into everyday situations. So
yeah, but the premise is about like a middle-aged guy who he's kind of like a loser type character living this, you know, shitty, you know, squalor apartment. Where is he anyway in the movie? Do we know?
Just some city.
Just some random city, and it takes place in this sort of alternative reality present where just a bunch of wacky shit is going on, and it's like indescribable, like what the world is like. And all I know is it's very like surrealist, absurdist thing. But basically, he gets a call about like his mother dying, and it's like his journey to go visit his mother to like kind of take care of like the funeral or whatever. That's like the premise of the movie, and then everything in between that is just a bunch of like bad shit, crazy, like nonstop. And he's just like very, very unlucky, but also he's like just kind of like a little bit this sort of this wimpy, feel bad for me character.
Yeah,
the whole
he's
time.
A very frail man. Yeah, he's quite literally the whole movie. He's taking it up the ass by every situation.
Yeah. And it's very uncomfortable and very anxiety-inducing, which is Ari Aster's kind of forte. And he loves to deal with themes of grief in all of his movies. It's always like something to do with someone dying and like them finding out about it in the worst way possible. Yeah. And like we're seeing their initial reaction. It's like unbelievable for them. It's like very, very uncomfortable.
It's very,
Let me say, all right, this might be my favorite Ari Aster movie.
I was going to say the same, yeah.
The world building right off the bat is amazing. The city he's able to create with all like the little characters, all the like wildness that's in the city, and like just like his surreal commentary on it, I love right off the bat.
Me too.
it's a comedy. First of all, it's a comedy when he's like used to horror, but it's comedy in like a very clever way, and it really hits. I didn't know that he could like deliver comedy like that. He always deals with grief, and he always deals with mothers. Just like the anxiety is like totally like turned up to the max in this. Maybe not as much as like Midsummer, where it's like literally all about grief, but it is very much like BEAU's anxiety through the audience. You're like, dude, he's not doing anything wrong, and everyone's always telling him, it's your fucking fault, BEAU, like you're the problem, and he's like just trying to get by, you know?
Yeah.
And that, like, when you project yourself into that character as an audience, like, you kind of feel that. Like, when you're passive in life, and, like, we've all done it, like, something's, like, happened to us, and it's, like, suddenly we're at fault for, like, being passive. I love this movie, dude. Just the ending, too, really sticks with me. Like, the empty stadium with the boat flipped over, and, like, the noise. Like, I just love that. I was like, that was a perfect cap off. Some people say it drags on in like the third act, but I felt like I was invested enough for it to drag on.
Sure.
At that point, you know.
Yeah, I feel that too. But like the third act, especially like the scene we're talking about with the boat, that's where it felt like there's many times in this movie where it feels like a literal nightmare, like anxiety dream that you've had, or like the worst possible scenario where things have just gone completely spiraled out of control, and he's literally being judged on like these minuscule things he did in his life, to the point where, like, spoiler alert, he probably like he dies because like he's like, or like set into purgatory or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is so bizarre, but so like, you know, if you deal with anxiety of any kind or any sort of mental like constraints in your life, like you feel that that kind of pressure that he's under, and like really, again, like very small things with his mother that are just heightened to like 1,000,000. You know, it's just so crazy.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about the beginning too in this city, when it's just everything's just so heightened and just turned up to 11. And he's being chased by like the guy who's like always touches the soup and stuff, and just like, oh, it's too hot and stuff like that. And there's like the killer he sees on TV is like right outside. Yeah. The cop is gonna shoot him, and it leads to him getting hit by a car. Like all that stuff is so well orchestrated and so funny. It reminded me of like, it's like he's playing with stuff like from Jacques Tati movies or Roy Anderson. Where it's this really heightened reality.
And very Roy Anderson,
yeah. And it's very Charlie
Kaufman-esque.
Yeah.
Even that, like the set pieces of that movie reminded me of like Synecdoche, New York, or something like that.
Yeah, I could see Synecdoche, New York, and then I'm thinking of Ending Things.
Yeah.
And also Anomalisa.
It's like so much like John Malkovich too, just like that like final act, like the reveal of like how involved everyone is like in his life, and like it was wild. Yeah, definitely like with anxiety too. You feel like, oh man, like you get in your head so much. You're like, was I weird there? Do people hate me? Blah blah blah. Like. Yeah, like I felt that.
And there's a lot of scenes in this a lot of parts in this movie where he either gets hit by something or like struck by something, and then it fades to black, and you like start a new sequence, or like there's always like something that builds up, and then he gets hit by a car and fade to black, or his body falls and it's like fade to black. Like that happens like at least like 3 times.
It does. Yeah. It's like a narrative tool to like push you to the next bizarre thing. And we were talking, I think, about the smoking scene. The daughter of the family that takes him in, and they like, oh, we're gonna take you home, like come with us. And he's battered up, he's like straight out of a hospital basically, and they start smoking like weed or something, like some sort of
it's
weed.
Like LSD.
Yeah. But like in terms of the story, like you perceive it as weed, but in his mind it might be like, oh my god, they're smoking PCP or something, like angel dust. Yeah. And he takes a hit and just completely, it's like if you've ever been too high in your life.
Yeah, if you're ever too high and someone's like filming you,
and
so
the girl
anxious when the girls are like filming him, and she's just like the teenagers are like filming like everything, which is also like a kind of a commentary of like today and stuff.
Yeah. There are a lot of commentaries in this movie.
This is definitely, I think this movie does hit the zeitgeist of our time.
It does.
Which is nice to see. Like I like to see movies about our time, you know? 'Cause I think as soon as people don't make movies about our time, that's when like movies will like be irrelevant.
Yeah.
I hope that never happens, because this movie, as abstract as it is, it's like covering a lot of different things that we're worried about. Like
mental illness, right? And like anxiety of living.
Just being a shut-in, like the COVID pandemic, being a shut-in, like he feels that like impending doom around him like all the time, and just being constantly, and like the girl in that movie, the girl who drinks the paint, it's like that.
Oh Jesus.
That angsty, the new generation who just like is so, you know, erratic and crazy.
Yeah.
and like they're so emotionally disturbed and stuff, and like how they feel like everything is heightened to 1,000,000, just kind of like BEAU, which is like everything matters so much, and then she drinks the entire thing of paint.
Yeah, and she's
so crazy.
Yeah.
Like when he comes into her house, she starts to feel like the attention that her parents are giving her like goes away, and then she's like feels threatened by that.
Yeah.
Too.
That family's so funny,
Yeah,
dude. The
Nathan
dad's
Lane
like,
is so funny.
Dad's like, hey, bud, how you doing, dude?
Yeah.
He calls him like, hey, butter. I forgot what he called my dude. We'll get you better by tomorrow.
Yeah.
He's just like, it's this creepy, like eerie feeling you get from them. It's so off-putting.
I like during dinner where they have the pills and like, ooh. Is it dessert already? Like puts pills.
Yeah, right.
The sort of intergenerational thing with him as a young kid. Like that kid like looks like he's CGI.
Yeah. I know, the makeup's bizarre on that.
The makeup is really bizarre, but in real life he looks like that. But like in the movie, he looks like it's like not a real character. Like it's a formation of like some AI generated.
It did.
Joaquin Phoenix young type kid, but it's actually just like a real kid. But the movie,
I know everyone tells me that.
I didn't think about that. It's so true though.
But so I guess his father is like a penis in the attic.
Yeah, essentially that's what we were shown. But who knows? Like, I love the whole like idea though, like the whole underlying like fear he has of like if I have sex. And I bust a nut, I'm gonna die. That was like so funny to me.
And that happens, but that happens to Parker
Posey.
Yeah.
My theory of the movie, I thought it was gonna end with him dying of orgasm, and like that's the one bit of relief he has, and like the one thing he can control in his life was to finally have sex. Yeah. I thought it would have been so crazy if he died, and just like that's how the movie ended. I was like, wow, if that movie goes here. And about the penis in the attic, I always found that as like he was so terrified of ever, anything sexual or phallic, like using his penis for anything. And I feel like that in the attic was like his trauma he was kind of burying away, and it was the association we had with his dad. Was like his dad died from having sex. And penetrating someone until he died, and I feel like that the dick symbolizes a lot of things that he buries deep in his psyche, as bizarre as it is. And the assassin guy that lived with the family comes in and just like fucking attacks the penis with the
just right in his head, dude. Oh god. I definitely got like being John Malkovich like vibes from it when it's like they go in the attic and there's like another like skinny BEAU.
Right.
In the corner and stuff. And it's like he was cloned. And just like got like vibes of like she runs this huge company. We don't know what this company is, but we see she's involved in like every aspect of BEAU's life. Like she's very hands-on.
Yeah, it gets really Kaufman-esque there too, because it's like life being more portrayed as like a corporation that like kind of has its hands on everything and like kind of manipulates every situation, which is all like internal kind of buffoonery that doesn't exist, but it's like, what if it did? And it kind of like it makes for a really surreal aspect of this movie too.
And then like a little fun fact thing is, so there's a sex scene with Joaquin Phoenix and Parker Posey in this movie, and they also have like a pretty graphic sex scene in Irrational Man directed by Woody Allen with Joaquin Phoenix and Parker Posey also. They have another sex scene in that movie. So it's like their second sex scene almost 10 years later.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix's balls are so fucking
You see like insert shots of like his balls. I don't know if they're prosthetic to kind of.
They must have been prosthetic.
They must have
been huge, dude.
Because they kind of give off the fact that he's never busted.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
If that's like even real, probably not. But like if your balls get big, if you don't.
I don't think so.
But Ari Aster and the Safdie brothers are two like. Those are the filmmakers that I'm going to like. I look forward to the most out of like the new generation.
So like pure auteurs that are like under
new
the age of
auteur
40, 45.
Yeah, like that new wave of auteurs that are coming out. Like I think, Robert Eggers, I like him. I guess the Northman kind of I wasn't as keen on that compared to The Lighthouse or The Witch, and that's like his first three movies. And then we got Ari Aster's first three. And I know that the Safdie brothers had like other smaller independent ones, but I kind of consider Good Time and Uncut Gems to be like their first like two kind of big like A24 pictures. And I'm just kind of waiting for their third one to come out since Ari Aster had like his third come out, Robert Eggers. And I kind of like put them all in the same sort of like level, like on the same pedestal. Maybe, but I do hold Ari Aster kind of above, and with the Safdie brothers above like Robert Eggers.
I obviously love the Safdie brothers. They're up there, but I don't put them in the same genre. I would put like Robert Eggers at top, and then Jordan Peele, and then Ari Aster. Even though I love this movie, I think he's like last for me.
I would agree. I mean, if we're talking about you're just like best new A24 people, I'd probably Safdie Brothers 1, because I think Good Time and Uncut Gems are like untouchable for those two.
Yeah,
I even love their earlier movies, like Heaven Knows What and Daddy Longlegs. I think are amazing movies. I'd go Eggers next. Ari Aster is only because Midsommar I just wasn't huge on, but they're all great. But like Robert Eggers is someone too that I feel like he's going to keep ramping it up till he hasn't had his Beau is Afraid yet, where it's like he hasn't.
Well, his movie flopped.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But it's so fucking good, dude.
The Northman we're talking about.
Yeah.
I love it too. It flopped, but I think he
I didn't love it.
A huge movie in him, like
Okay,
the size of Beau is Afraid, you know.
Yeah, but I guess the Northman like probably had a bigger budget than Beau is Afraid.
It did have a big budget. It wasn't A24.
It was big. And yeah, that was more of like supposed to be more marketable than his other two movies, because it's like a big Viking epic, but it's more, you know, more artsy.
But definitely like Ari Aster, like I'm definitely still on that wave. Like I think this definitely hit for me, and Beau is Afraid definitely I fuck with it for sure. I fuck with all of his movies. They're all great.
Yeah. I'm going to see it again, probably. Once it comes out, I'll probably buy it or something like that.
Did you see it in IMAX?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it was great in IMAX.
It was good, dude. Like, I went into it with, you know, so many mixed reviews in my mind. Like, people that saw it, they were like, dude, I was just trying to find anything to distract myself in that movie. And then people were like, I love this movie. And like, yeah, I like went in with just like not knowing what to expect and loved it. I loved it, dude.
Yeah, this is not a movie I can show to like my family that I think they would like. I do want to rewatch it. It's just kind of like a little bit tough right now because the runtime is like 3 hours. Like I had to wait 3 hours to see this movie again.
It's a
tough.
commitment.
Yeah. You were talking about Babylon 2 before. Like that's another movie that had just very mixed reviews at the initial release, but I ended up loving that movie.
Oh yeah, I think that's gonna be a cult classic, dude.
I hope so, yeah, because like it bombed really bad, and like the people that love it, like myself, I think it's amazing.
No, it's amazing too. Yeah, I'm a Damien Chazelle like fan for life.
Yeah.
No, my family, like I saw it on Christmas with my family, and they actually all liked it. And even before they were like my brother's being hella annoying. He's like, oh, dude, it's like my stepdad's like, oh, it's 3 hours, and my brother's like, oh, like 55% Metacritic, oh, like all this bullshit. Like watch it. I'm like, dude, like it's Christmas with the family, and we're gonna watch it. And then it was actually like they actually really did enjoy it. It was
that's good.
3 hours, you know?
Yeah.
It's just that thing, like you take a huge swing like that, and like if it doesn't make money, you're kind of screwed. But like it's Damien Chazelle.
Damien Chazelle. He's not necessarily in director's.
He's not in director's jail because he's made so many hit movies.
Yeah.
You know, even before this.
And he does commercials and stuff. Like he'll just do a smaller picture or something.
What do you think about Ari Aster in this context?
Oh, I think he's not in movie jail at all, dude.
What's the budget? Like, what's the? Has it made money back yet? Like,
I don't think so. But the budget,
$2 million.
It's the biggest A24 budget ever.
It's not good.
No, yeah, it cost $35 million, but it's almost like he's gonna keep making movies.
He'll be fine.
Yeah.
This movie was bound to not be as big of a hit as the previous two.
It's just not necessarily marketable. The only thing that's marketable about it is that people say it's like crazy and you don't know what the fuck it is. But I'm not going to show this to my dad. I'm not going to show it to my brother. I'm not going to show it to my mom.
I wouldn't recommend it to any of my family.
Yeah, Beau is Afraid, Ari Aster, any more things to say about it? I mean, there's so much you can talk about with it. It's just kind of like you can pick apart like different scenes. But
shout out to Bill Hader who.
That was funny.
He had a funny cat called him.
Yeah.
I love that scene, dude.
It's so funny.
He's like, try calling me back.
Yeah. That scene was.
He's like, I'm so sorry.
Hysterical. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, there's so many like funny moments. Like my whole theater was like cracking up the whole time.
Too.
Yeah, it was like awesome.
Yeah. People were laughing, and it actually was funny. It wasn't just like some Knives Out bullshit where everyone's laughing at the dumbest shit ever.
Yeah, it wasn't like some fucking like Rain Johnson fucking ass bullshit.
Wow. Ryan Johnson.
Oh, Ryan Johnson. Oh. Yeah.
What was your favorite bit in Beau is Afraid? Like, what made you laugh the most? For me, it was
when everyone starts walking into his apartment.
Exactly,
building,
and then
he's trying to pay, and the guy's like, "What are you like?" Dude, that shit's
It was
anxiety.
so good. I think it was when he ran on the street for me and got hit by the bus.
Dude.
Like everything leading up to that was so funny.
Yeah, dude. For me, it was like the start of that where the guy was like above him in the
Yeah.
bathtub.
Yeah,
he
the
was just
bathtub.
like,
Oh yeah,
it was
dude.
just like,
Yeah.
he was like, no,
Yeah.
no, like sweating.
Like that was like I was sweating because like he's like above him and it was like a minute long of them staring at each other.
Yeah,
before
that's
he fell
hilarious.
on.
Yeah, and he's like slowly like slipping.
Yeah.
Like what the fuck is that? Like it's just so so
I have
random,
no
but
idea.
you don't even need to like ask questions about a movie like this, why things are happening. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's all just so absurd.
Yeah.
It is like a nightmare. It definitely is. I know it's like kind of stereotypical to say like shit like that, but like it literally is a nightmare.
No, it literally is. That's the conceit of the movie. Is like it's your worst anxiety trip ever. Like
Yeah.
if you like take too much NyQuil before you go to sleep or something, you can have a dream like Beau's afraid.
I'm not sure if you're aware, Jake, but we're pretty big fans of Guy Ritchie.
I was aware.
Jakob and I.
I'm aware.
We've pretty much seen all of his movies, and we're just big fans of him, and we'll go see any movie he puts out. And recently on the channel, we went to go see Operation Fortune Rustigire, which came out a month ago, and we talked about it on this channel. And then last weekend, he released another movie, which was Guy Ritchie's The Covenant.
That's the full title.
Yeah,
Guy
that's
Ritchie's.
like Fellini Satyricon.
Yeah, we have two.
Guy Ritchie's The Covenant.
Right.
Yeah, Jack and I went to go see it. Like first day it came out.
Yeah.
It was actually a good experience compared to what we expected, and also just compared in general to his last picture, Rustigire.
Yeah. I went away from Rustigire probably liking it more than most people just because there were fun moments in it. There were a lot of drag on, like boring moments in it, right? And I think it tainted my expectations a little bit for this movie. Plus, on top of that, it's like very much like a pro-military movie.
Yeah.
And I'm never the biggest fan of those movies. But this movie really surprised me with how much I liked it and how good I thought the storytelling was. He was on his game this time.
Yeah, and this movie was definitely a more serious movie tonally. His most serious movie he's ever done. I don't know what else can like compare to this movie like thematically. That's serious. Nothing else really that he's done is quite like it.
The beach or
The island.
The island.
No. Yeah, but this movie he kind of just like made it very, very cohesive story about this guy. It's just like a very easy to follow story compared to Operation Fortune. Operation Fortune, he's doing this ensemble piece, this kind of witty spy ensemble piece, and he jumps around a lot. It's kind of hard to know what the fuck is going on. Like, you just have this basic idea about like, oh, these guys are penetrating this arms dealer's, circle, and that's kind of like but you don't really know when they're on the mission. I don't know what the fuck they're actually trying to do. With this movie, it's literally about a group of soldiers that's trying to find bomb-making facilities that the Taliban is doing in Afghanistan in 2018 and stuff. Step by step, them going and like penetrating this facility, and the plan fails, and this guy, the interpreter that they hire, actually is like him and Jake Gyllenhaal are the only ones who survive, but he has to like trek him across like this terrain for however long
with Taliban chasing them.
Yeah, with
actively
Taliban chasing him.
Yeah. He's like he becomes like one of the top 10 most wanted by the Taliban and later on in the movie because he like dragged Jake Gyllenhaal across enemy lines for like God knows how many miles. It felt like an eternity.
It felt like Jake Gyllenhaal was out for like a month.
Like a month, yeah.
Like, it was insane, dude.
Yeah. And he basically, Jake Gyllenhaal's character is this really respected sergeant in the army, and his life is saved by this interpreter, and he brings him back home alive. But then when he comes home, he finds out the interpreter is still stuck in Afghanistan, and so he plans a rescue mission to go back into Afghanistan like by himself to like save this dude that saved his life.
Yeah.
And it's called the Covenant because a covenant is made up of a bond, a privilege, or something like I don't know.
A pledge or like
They say it at the end of the movie. There's a title card.
Yeah, and that's a very thematically like this movie. When you watch it, there's not like a standout Guy Ritchie like stylistically, but there are things in it that are very Guy Ritchie. And like in the beginning,
the name cards, and then like, dude, just that like overhead helicopter shot, like the symmetry he has of like them like following the car at the beginning. I was like, that's really it has like a Guy Ritchie style to
Yeah,
it.
and then there's a scene where they like break open the beers and stuff, and they're grilling the steak on the thing because Guy Ritchie loves steaks.
Yeah, he
in all
loves
of his
steaks.
movies.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. All of his movies, there's like a steak in there, and it's the sort of like gentlemanly bond that men have in like times of like crisis. And, like,
Yeah, I
what it
found
means
that
to
really
be-
Guy Ritchie. Yeah, the bond of
of
this
men.
brotherhood that they sort of
Yeah.
forged together.
Mm-hmm.
I found this movie actually really watchable, like extremely engaging.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, doesn't have the Guy Ritchie isms, like the winky nature of like the spy, Operation Fortune and stuff like that.
It's a very grounded, serious.
Extremely serious. I found that like the two lead performances by Gyllenhaal and the guy who plays Ahmed, the interpreter, were like fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like really physically demanding, really emotionally like kind of taxing like what they have to go through. And like it's very cut and dry. The story's really standard issue, but
For sure.
it's really well executed. And like Guy Ritchie undeniably is a really just stable director and knows how to make the right choices to make like the pace work.
Mm-hmm.
The action sequence is really engaging and like the
Yeah.
interactions between characters.
The action is great and intense, and I think with this movie compared to, Operation Fortune was produced by like Miramax, like that was like the biggest studio name behind it, whereas The Covenant is like an MGM production, so they're putting in like so much more production values, but you can tell with like the action and the way it's shot and the sets and everything, they like really put a lot behind it, and it was like executed very well with Guy Ritchie. All the action and like explosions and the gunfights and shit, it was very grounded and stuff.
I want to talk about a few points. So the CGI took me out of the movie. I don't know if you noticed, but all the smoke in it, it's all CGI. Every time a helicopter like goes through it, I just think it looks bad. Like when there's the plane shot, it's like all CGI and stuff. That like took it out of groundedness, and then I felt like the shooting was like not grounded at all. You know, it was like boom boom, shoots two people in the head, they're dead. Boom boom.
Right, it's PG-13, right? Wasn't the movie PG-13 because
It was?
I could be wrong, but it didn't feel as violent. Because I don't remember a lot of blood or anything. I could be wrong, but I know what you mean with the shootouts feel. They do feel very Call of Duty-esque in a way.
Oh, this is definitely Guy Ritchie's Call of Duty.
Yeah.
It definitely feels like a Call of Duty mission where it's like you're literally
Extraction
following
points,
one person at a time into this like shit, and like you gotta extract, and like the enemies felt like very much like Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Like, one truck shows up.
Exactly.
Another truck shows up. Another truck shows up. It's like, oh, we're getting overrun. We gotta retreat back.
Yeah.
And, like shit like that.
There's an AC-130 scene that's like
saves
them at the very end.
Dude, if you
like,
love Call of Duty, then you'll love this movie.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, probably.
But I would have to agree with some of the CGI. There were some helicopters shots and some plane shots of them flying. That was clearly some CGI. And then also there were some typical predictable things about the movie when it comes to the style. But also Jake Gyllenhaal definitely like does an amazing job.
Yeah.
Like we're getting like a premier star in a Guy Ritchie movie compared to like the usual suspects of like Jason Statham, blah 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 blah. Like with Jake Gyllenhaal's like a real actor doing like a big movie with Guy Ritchie and stuff. When Jack and I were walking to the movie theater, we were like, "There's definitely going to be some slow motion shots of Jake Gyllenhaal like going through some shit and like a close up of his face in slow mo, going through some stress."
Yeah.
And there was probably like 10 of those
There's a
shots
lot of
in
those,
that movie.
Oh yeah, there's like 10 scenes of him just
there's so many shots of Jake Gyllenhaal like, whoa, like, and you can sit in the
Extreme
hand,
close-ups,
blood, like,
when he gets the gun.
Another like military trope that's going to be in the movie is going to be like him arguing with like his superiors
Staff sergeant,
about something that's like so obviously should be done, which is this, like these interpreters should get green cards.
He gives like a
Route to
really
safety.
heartful speech to his like commanding officer about getting the green cards for him.
He's like, I have a hook in me.
Yeah.
So patriotic and so
Yeah.
emotional. Gyllenhaal sells it really well though. It's like
he really does.
Yeah.
But that speech, I was like, oh that stood out to me. But the end of it, where he's like, and I'm here.
Yeah.
Because I saved your life 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the
It's like always
fuck?
a
You're
different
taking
like
it out.
backstory they introduce.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like the hero of all the military, you know. It's like,
Yeah,
so
but
weird.
it does a good job of not just vilifying Afghanistan. It actually has like a whole other perspective of the people who were living in Afghanistan during the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like going through the war
Dar
and shit.
Dar Salim Ursuline, the guy that plays the interpreter.
Yeah.
He's so good in this.
He's
he really
fantastic.
matches Jake Gyllenhaal so well. Two things, alright? I might be reading too much into this movie. Jake Gyllenhaal first meets Darcelim's character. He's like, alright, bring him forward. And, like, he's, like, talking to, like, the interpreter. And he's basically testing him and, like, how well he, like, understands English, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, what's that? Oh, that's an engine. He's like, are you patronizing me? He's like, I would never do that to you. I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal, like, really makes a point to go beyond just being, like, this military dude. Like, he's a believable person in this movie, and he really does, like, care about the people. Maybe he's not, at the beginning, as connected to his interpreters and, like, what they go through in Afghanistan. He's more of, like, on the side of U.S. military. But definitely by the end, like, we have this understanding between two cultures that is, like, really special. And then the other thing is, like, they never address it, but, like, Jake Gyllenhaal's whole entire unit's wiped out. Like, really his interpreter is, like, the last person alive. So it's, like, that's another catalyst for, like, why he's doing what he's doing is because, like, he's grieving so much, like, and they never address that.
I do love the scene. I like how it is subtly portrayed, but, like, after they escape, like, him and the interpreter guy are just sitting, kind of, like, hiding away from the Taliban, and Gyllenhaal's just having, like, he's about to explode, but he doesn't. But then the interpreter guy's looking at him. You know he wants to say something, like, I'm sorry for you lost your whole fucking squadron or whatever, but he doesn't say anything either. They kind of just, like, brush over it, because they know they know what just happened. Like, it's inexplainable. Like, how could you rationalize it?
Yeah.
And that's how they kind of brush over it. And I thought that was, like, a really well acted, really well done. Like, for Guy Ritchie to make a really subtle moment like that is actually kind of, like, rare for him, because he's
not subtle though.
He's not a subtle director ever, and this felt like his most subtle sort of. He wanted to service the story as much as possible and not put himself into like any stylistic choices or.
Yeah, I think he might have felt like it would have been in bad taste, considering the whole war that went on in Afghanistan. We were there for like 20 years.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
But it's cool how he does this story with these two guys from completely separate backgrounds, from completely separate cultures, are able to find a bond through this like crazy adventure that they go through. Jake Gyllenhaal, he does a good job, but he is kind of just playing Jake Gyllenhaal as a serious sergeant, though. It's not like he's playing like a Nightcrawler type guy or like Denis Villeneuve, like Prisoners type character, or shit like that, or like even Michael Bay. And Michael Bay, he's playing more of a character than I think in this. And this one, he is kind of just playing this American like grizzly, tough sergeant guy.
Totally. I wanted to ask you guys about Gyllenhaal because, like, I think in the 2010s he was working with more like auteurs in a way, and like he wanted to do more showy work. In a way, now he's kind of.
And then he made Velvet Buzzsaw.
Yeah, like he that was definitely a bad misstep. But like now he's kind of. It seems like he wants
Nocturnal Animals. That was Nocturnal Animals.
He was doing really art. He seems like he's turned away from the art, artistic side of him, and he's doing more like Ambulance and this, and working with like really masculine directors.
Yeah.
Kind of becoming like
male fantasy director.
Yeah, and like he's doing the UFC. He's doing the Roadhouse remake. Like he was like
that's
UFC,
right. That's right.
UFC thing. Like he's really gone towards the masculine side of his like star persona, and doesn't really do the Villeneuve stuff or the Nightcrawler stuff. So I don't know. Do you guys want him to do more like work with more auteur directors, or just keep doing the the star thing?
Well, obviously, I think he does want to do it. It's just that when it comes to the trajectory of an actor's career, getting into all that auteur stuff, like that's almost like a wave. And then it kind of like your relevancy almost a little bit falls off. And other guys coming in, like fucking Joaquin Phoenix or like Robert Pattinson is on that auteur wave for sure and stuff. And I think it's just a matter of, timing in an actor's career. Like Ryan Gosling is also a guy who did a lot of auteur shit in the 2010s, and now he's
he's
kind of like
a staple and stuff.
Yeah, he's not really like. I think it's just because your career path as an actor is kind of a little bit like dicey when it comes to directors and when you're hot and when you're not. True. When people want to work with you, and there's other people that come in, and like younger generation comes in, you get older, and you get like Timothée Chalamet getting all these other roles and stuff like that. And
even Tom Cruise did that because he started out doing like standard issue movies, then he fell down the like in the 90s he worked with like Kubrick, PTA, all these people, and now he's like he found his niche. So I wonder if like Gyllenhaal like found a niche of like he wants to portray soldiers and like bank robbers and like do a Marvel movie and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, he was in Spider-Man.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Dude.
So it's just an interesting path because like
It's just like I think it's also a little bit on like cashing out too as well,
Mhm.
right? Just kind of like seeing what you can get done before your career tapers off, because like an actor's career is like, dude, it's so unpredictable.
It's like
bro.
yeah.
There's only like a few people who can like take time off and just do an art house movie and then dip out and then come back. Like there's only like a handful of like
There is,
actors like that. And Jake Gyllenhaal, I don't think he's necessarily like on that level of like a DiCaprio, or
No.
like a Bradley Pitt or something like that. Like Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
He's
He just
only
could-
worked with auteur directors his
Yeah.
whole career.
Joaquin
So.
Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah, he's always been avant-garde minded, I feel like.
Jake Gyllenhaal, I don't think he's on that level, but I do
No.
think he's an amazing actor.
I do too.
He's amazing, dude. I love like Prisoners, Nightcrawler,
He's
Jake
Enemy.
Gyllenhaal.
He's incredible. That wave, like when he was in Nightcrawler and
Yeah.
Prisoners, that's like the peak of his career in terms of like talent.
I'm always curious though, like, because we don't know these people. Like, how similar are people's roles they're portraying, like who they actually are, like things they liked in their life. Like, is Jake Gyllenhaal like kind of like into this kind of stuff, more masculine stuff, like in his real life? Like, is this something that like he finds like that he can commit himself to easier and it's more fulfilling to him? Then if so, like, I think like I'm happy for him. You know? But like. Yeah, like you said, Felix, like really well said. I think there's a lot of people that are willing to work in like the auteur sphere. It is like a wave.
And it's a risk to. I think sometimes maybe even it is a little bit of a risk to work with auteurs because you're not going to get maybe the exposure, and maybe if you do that too much, you're kind of going to fall under the radar of like the mainstream agencies, and like people aren't going to be. It's all like a business at the end of the day too. How you go about your career and like what people suggest for you to do and whatever. But obviously, I think Jake Gyllenhaal wants to be the greatest artistic actor he can be. You know, I don't think he's phoning it in. I just think it's just like a good career move to like go back to making more like blockbuster films because it's just good for money and stuff. And like you have this commodity of yourself. Like you should go through with it as much as you can before it gets stale, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And I think he puts in commitment and artistry even into his performances.
He's committed for sure.
He's never phoned in a performance I've ever seen, in my opinion. And like, like Ambulance last year, honestly, that was like one of my favorite performances last year.
Ambulance is so great.
He was crazy.
He was so insane. He matched the energy of Michael Bay's filmmaking better than most actors like ever have, in my opinion.
I think so too.
Like back to like Nick Cage and The Rock and like Will Smith and shit back in the day. Like I think it's like on that level. So I wanted him to keep doing this stuff, honestly. I think it's really interesting. And maybe like in a decade when he's like 50, he'll do like another, he'll work with Ari Aster or something. You never know.
We'll always like, I think he's always going to be in the mind of the American like audiences. But it is crazy he did a Michael Bay movie last year and then the Guy Ritchie movie.
I know,
It's like,
it's definitely a trend,
I also feel like part of it's too, like he wants to he's at a point in his career where he wants to work with certain directors he's never worked with.
True. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to work with Michael Bay? I guess if you make like masculine action movies like that, it's like that's the peak of if you want to work with Michael Bay. As Guy Ritchie fans, though, like what's the apex of Guy Ritchie? Like, what's his best movie, in your opinion?
His best movies, Lock, Stock, and then Snatch.
I was gonna say, like,
Snatch, I mean, obviously, Lock, Stock is probably my favorite one, and then The Gentleman or Snatch. But like, I think when it comes to like his new wave career, like him as a grown up man, like The Gentleman is my favorite one. It's like all the ingredients in it.
Yeah.
But it's just like more of a now type movie, whereas Lock, Stock, it's like him, like a young, ambitious dude, British guy in the pub, like showing that world off, and he's not necessarily there anymore.
No, he's not.
We can't expect Lock, Stock, and stuff. But I think we can expect more like
The
gentleman type shit. Sure. You know what I mean?
He's making a TV show, and then what is it? Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Oh
is his next movie.
Yeah. Bro, I look forward to that shit, bro. That looks fucking sick.
He works, his work schedule is insane. Like, since, like, the mid-2010s, he's put out, like, 1 or 2 movies a year since. Yeah. Like, at post-Sherlock Holmes, it's, like, pretty crazy how much he's put up.
We definitely does a one for you, one for them.
Yeah, like Aladdin.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I feel like a lot of people have the stigma of, like, oh, higher-hand directors, right? I kind of respect him that, like, he's not afraid to do a movie for them. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I'm such a fan of him. I might be biased, but like he's not gonna put his pride before stuff like that.
When we go see a Guy Ritchie movie, we go see it because like we're gonna get that personality in it.
Yeah.
Like he's an auteur working in like a more mainstream, high budgeted medium, but we're like what makes him satisfying. Like with this movie, yeah, it wasn't totally Guy Ritchieism, but there was a certain flavor in it that like I'm like, okay, now I'm watching a Guy Ritchie movie. If this was like a fucking McG movie, none of this would be like in here or whatever like type.
Yeah.
Other director like Antoine Fuqua type vibe. Like this is like he does Antoine Fuqua type movies, but he has like the auteur spirit to it.
You could see like David Ayer or someone directing The Covenant.
Yeah.
It might have been
Sam Mendes.
It'd be much more like self-serious or just not the right tone. But I always find it interesting that he has become a studio for a filmmaker, like that really reliable one. Because like he started out with Lock, Stock, and Snatch, which are so like against the system, like sort of punk rock movies that are very stylish and like kind of like fuck you to the system in a way. Like with Danny Boyle is the same way. Like he started with Trainspotting, like these British directors who probably grew up loving punk music and stuff and had that mentality. Yeah. Matthew Vaughn was one of them too, and now they're like, it's cool that they've adapted this studio system too, though, because then they can go off and make a giant, The Gentleman or Wrath of Man and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. His most underrated work, Guy Ritchie, is Rock and Roll.
Rock and Roll.
Yeah, Rock and Roll and Revolver. I actually really like Revolver a lot. I mean, a lot of people don't. I actually did like that movie a lot. I think my favorite Guy Ritchie movies are the gangster British fucking shit that goes down.
I mean, that's what everyone would say, right?
Like, no one would really say like King Arthur or like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. But
those Sherlock Holmes were good. They were good. They were like
well done. Sherlock Holmes is good, but obviously like the British gangster shit that he does is like the top tier of the Guy Ritchie stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
Snatch and Lock, Stock were two movies in hype because like we all went through that phase where you're like, I want to watch all the gangster crime movies, like and then like I watched Tarantino's stuff and Scorsese, and then you get eventually like, oh, my friend loved Guy Ritchie in high school, said like Snatch and Lock, Stock are like the peak of 90s new wave of like post Pulp Fiction cinema. Like they really are though.
Well, the reason why I discovered Lock, Stock, and Snatch is because when I first discovered Tarantino, I was watching Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and like Jackie Brown and shit. And then when I went to IMDb for Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, there was like movies like this, or movies like this, and it was like Lock, Stock, and Snatch. I don't know who Guy Ritchie was. I don't know who the fuck he was. And I looked those movies up and I watched them. I'm like, oh fuck, these are
so good.
These are sick as fuck.
One of the first like auteur filmmakers I discovered, and he's been my favorite ever since. But like I think I discovered him because I watched Smoking Aces.
Smoking Aces. It's all in that Matthew Vaughn wave. Like Matthew Vaughn produced wave British crime stuff that goes down like Layer Cake and.
Layer
Cake's great, dude. That's great.
I like Matthew Vaughn quite a bit too.
I think he's underrated.
Yeah. Oh, he really is.
I think he's really underrated. But we're just Guy Ritchie fans. Even if he's not putting out like his best work or the best show that's coming out in movies, like I'm gonna go see it just because of the brand of it. I like the brand of it. Operation Fortune has like this sort of like flat lighting gloss, like cheaper. It was a cheaper quality compared to The Covenant,
Yeah, it really was.
It just wasn't as like high production value compared to the Covenant. But the thing about The Covenant, like if The Covenant was coming out and it was just some random director or whatever, it was just like Jake Gyllenhaal war movie, I'd probably been like, dude, this looks like bullshit.
I wouldn't have seen it.
I wouldn't have seen it. Yeah, I go see
Antoine Fuqua or something.
Yeah, I go and see it because of the name, the brand. You know what I'm saying? That's like why I went to. Otherwise, I would have never seen this. I would have been like, "This looks like a piece of shit movie."
That's most war movies that come out because they're very samey, and they have the same sort of, like you were saying about the pro-American military, which this movie didn't have because Guy Ritchie's British. He doesn't really have this sort of mentality that like really horny for the military.
But I feel like it did sometimes.
It did sometimes. I feel like it was more the camaraderie of the soldiers versus like. Because in the end, like the American system kind of like fucked them over because they weren't able to immigrate him over it was kind of like even
Yeah.
exposing how fucked up it is that we're not able to save
Yeah,
people.
exactly. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily propaganda. Like,
No, I don't think
war
so.
movie, because they definitely, in the end, they're like, no, we're not going to go help you save this guy. Like, fuck that. You know, they actually
Exactly.
they actually kind of turn against him in a way, and he has to take it into his own hands and risk his own life just with a truck and drive into the fucking Taliban.
So it's
Yeah, that was
crazy.
fucking ridiculous
So
at
insane,
the end,
yeah,
dude.
yeah.
Where he's like, he goes there, like spends like what, like $500,000 to like get this private
Yeah.
like team.
They
and they're,
remortgaged
like,
his house, like he said, I think with his wife. And he's
Yeah,
probably going to be in debt forever to
Yeah.
just save that guy. But it was,
yeah.
you wanted him to do it so badly. You're like,
Yeah.
fucking get that guy out of there.
Yeah.
Which is like
Yeah.
so badass too. Like
Yeah.
I'm not like a big like dude, but that was like very much like fuck yeah.
It was a
dude.
great bromance. And the end's ridiculous too, before the AC-130 like saves them.
Oh, dude,
Yeah,
It's
that
an
shit is
entire
crazy,
fucking army.
yeah.
Like,
No,
what the-
I
it was
like,
awesome,
I loved
yeah.
it. I actually like it. Really brought the end. The ending was very explosive, and I like that.
Yeah.
Like when I say with with movies, you know, like a lot of times they can be really engaging in the beginning. You get some cool action or whatever, and then it kind of tapers off, and the ending isn't as good as the beginning. But I think that this one was like, he really like just blows all that shit up, and it's like crazy, and it's like very engaging. Yeah.
And I love the way it ended too. Like it ended on where it ended, not like, oh, you see them in America. Oh, he's working
He
at
meets
his
his
auto
family,
shop. You
yeah.
know, like I don't want the Fast and Furious ending. I like the ending where it's just like ends on them, just like the recognition they have between each other on the plane.
Like, what would you say is your favorite like Guy Ritchie that's like new wave, not like the old?
The new wave Guy Ritchie?
Yeah.
Man, I need to see more of it.
Have you seen the Gentleman?
I haven't seen The Gentleman or Wrath of Man.
You haven't seen
yet.
The Gentleman?
No.
I could have sworn you watched it with us.
Bro,
No,
we
dude.
have,
I've always said I want to watch it with you
we
guys.
have, dude. We have it here, bro.
Yeah.
To be honest, I haven't loved anything yet because I haven't watched the stuff that's supposed
The Gentleman is his best movie since his like early days.